Alrighty. Howdy neighbors, and welcome back to Deluge Threnody of Crashing Waves. Last time we engaged in breaking and entering. And I think we found out that the church is a cult. Also, I think someone broke our window. Cool. What? Suddenly we were shaken by the sound of breaking glass. A large stone had crashed through the window and came hurtling onto the floor. For a second, Ina sat frozen, still clutching the document tightly in her fist. Then she stood up from her chair. It's a church, they're on to us. Oh yeah, they're also chasing us. Forgot to mention that. Whoopsie. Run. Perfect. Nice. Nice. Hell yeah. Part 4. Crosswinds. Go, 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 go. We scrambled down the stairs and out through the fire escape. I hadn't fully recovered from our previous sprint and began to lag behind, but Ina grabbed me by my arm, pulled me onwards toward the streets. I made it to Ina's house. As we entered her room, she locked the door and hastily closed the curtains. You think they'll find us here? Yes, I do. No, they will. But I think they've stated their case. They're bound to leave us alone for now. I hope we don't end up like Karen. Bina was already rifling through her papers, trying to find the passage she left off. Next morning, I spent indoors, resting my weary head. I had abstained from putting my recent discoveries to paper, as I was aware the family would habitually go through my belongings whenever I was out. I returned to the beach later that afternoon. All traces of yesterday's vigil had been erased by the morning tide. It wasn't long before I caught Hendrika sitting against the sand dune. She was quietly singing to herself, an old fishwife's tune. Herring ashore, herring ashore. Put on your boots, they'll be back with more. Herring ashore, herring ashore. She was no longer making any effort to conceal her perpetual surveillance of me. The following day, I conversed with Cooper. He appeared to have returned to his affable self, without a trace of the possessed fervor that I witnessed in him 2 nights ago. I surmised to him that I had not found anything abrasive within his teachings, and that I would take the night ship in order to relay this message to the passerby. The presbytery, sorry. Cooper seemed pleased and thanked me heartily for my visit. And to be honest, the man made such a wholesome impression on me that afternoon. I felt inclined, and the evening's silence fell upon the town once more, to embark to the beach one last time, just to confirm that my conclusions were truly correct, and as not to lay false judgment upon his character. That night, as I headed toward the dunes, I noticed the air was devoid of smoke. When I arrived at the place where the servant had previously been held, I found it to be desolate. I was fully out that night, so that the island was at its largest, and I could walk out far over the moonlit beach. That's when I saw, from a distance, at the northmost tip of the island, there shone a faint light. As I hurried toward the light, under the cover of dunes, I did not fall prey of watching eyes. I saw a large gathering of people had converged once again, and that some of them were carrying torches. And Cooper was speaking, leading a sinister ceremony in his animated manner. I took shelter behind a cluster of large stones that stood close to the dunes. But as the tide was out, the congregation stood near the shoreline. I could not clearly make out the Reverend's words. Over the torches, the moonlight illuminated the nocturnal scene. I had a clear line of sight to the spectacle which took place upon the shore. For more than an hour, the Reverend preached, and over time I grew aware of certain visual change in his gesticulations. It was as though the motions of his hands and his body became more erratic and disjointed in nature. And simultaneously with the change, his voice grew louder, to the point where I could clearly make out the sounds he brought forth. But what reached my ears no longer resembled any human speech, for it had acquired a strange guttural quality that sounded wholly alien to me. In all of his characteristics, Cooper had become ailed with an unholy, demonic possession that made me prey to any remaining forces of good on this forsaken isle. And after a sermon, the noise died down, and I could see a silhouette upon the shore, which I recognized as the silhouette of a young woman. And I can see that she was unclothed, her pale white skin reflecting the moonlight to the extent that it appeared to be glowing. She had waving black hair that reached down to her thighs. And from what I could tell, it was Hendrika, the pastor's daughter. And she stepped forward and knelt down into the surf. With the eyes of the congregation upon her, I saw the ripples passing through the waters. And though it was completely windless that night, the sea erupted in sudden tempest. The pale light I fancied, and in the pale light I fancied, I saw 100,000 pitch-black wires coiling through the waves. And then something emerged from the waters. I deemed it to be a shadow at first, as it was blacker than the dead of night, but as it rose higher, I soon found it to be wholly opaque. A solid mass, pitch black, as though no light could ever escape from it. And as it emerged, the crowd erupted in ecstasy, uttering words in heathen tongues and reciting the name of Lotan. The being crept onto the sand, and into a ring of bystanders. Slowly it drew toward the black-haired girl. And I fear I have no other word for this unholy, unspeakable act. But it knew Hendrika. It knew her, there, for careless eyes, upon the moonlit shore. But already I was running, back through the dunes, down the entire stretch of the fields that lay between me and the harbor. And I clambered up to my room, gathering my clothes and papers haphazardly before rushing toward the dock, where the mail boat lay that would leave for the mainland that night. And I sat there until it departed, all the while quivering, thinking of the things that exist beneath the waves, of which no good Christian man has any understanding. Ina sat there, reading the last page in silence, while she dragged her nails across the fabric of her skirt. It is with a long technical appeal, in which he recommends expulsion of the Church of Abbot with the highest prejudice. That was quite the story. Ina nodded. Suddenly, she'd become languid, as though all the excitement of the past few hours had suddenly seeped out of her. I have a lot to process. Her voice rolled. I'm sorry, I really need to go to sleep. We're going to discuss our findings tomorrow. If you want, we can take the couch. I paced through the desolate streets. An unstationary sensation washed over me, as though everything had suddenly become tinted by the strange superstitions that the church document had laid bare. Wherever it was that Ina had read to me yesterday evening, it appeared like something out of a horror novel. And the realization that the inhabitants of the town, Leopold, John Cooper, Ina herself, had placed so much weight on it, showed just how underdeveloped their minds must have become. I've been callous. I treated these people as my peers, but I should be careful. Suddenly a voice rang out behind me. Down in the dumps? I jumped. Rika, nice to see you. Looks like someone has a bad conscience. She smiled. Anyway, how are you doing? I'm okay, I had a rough night. I hope Ina has been keeping you from your studies. She looked at me with all-knowing eyes, making me wonder how much exactly she had learnt about our brushing with the clergy last night, and the mystifying document that we managed to capture. Say, I wanted to thank you again for letting me join you on your beach trip last Wednesday. I realized I didn't leave you much of a choice, but I want you to know it meant a lot to me. I'm blessed to have you as a friend. Sometimes I'm afraid to let myself go, you see? I get caught up in my workout schedule and my church duties. But sometimes I forget to savor the moment, to make lasting memories. At the beach with my friends. Youth is far too short to waste. I'd like to make more memories with you, Abe. You spoke with such honest candor. Condor. That I couldn't help but be touched by her words. But then, before I go, I'm curious. Did you find it? Fuck! What? The book you were looking for last Monday. Oh, okay. Her skipped a beat. Forgot to ask if you managed to find it in the end. Her eyes shot fire. I wasn't sure how to respond. It was clear that she knew more than she was letting on. The question was, how much? I'm afraid I didn't find it. You didn't. Her face warped into a menacing grimace. Didn't you? Fuck! She's the one I liked! God damn it! I liked her. This is bullshit. What do I do? Fuck, what do I do? I didn't. I apologize. I will cease playing games. I've been keeping you in the dark about a lot of things. So many questions by now. Though she feigned remorse, a playful glare hadn't completely faded from her eyes. I have to change for the afternoon service soon. Let's say you come over later tonight, and I'll answer all your questions. Later tonight? Your parents let you have a guy over on a Sunday evening. Oh, but I have something far better in mind. She winked. Call me telling you that I was well connected. I have the keys to the Sanford house. Let's say we meet there at 8 p.m. I'll explain everything to you then. I promise. What is with the menacing music? What the fuck? I just got here. What the fuck? Will you join me? Yeah, let's see what Abe. I'm so happy, Abe. I'm overflowing with joy. She's about to burn me. I don't want to die. Fuck. This is... I knew from the beginning something was gonna happen. Garbage. I promise everything will be a lot clearer after tonight. Please excuse me for now. have to look my best for the afternoon service. See you later. Fuck off. I'm so upset. I'm so upset. I should have just gone for my. I'm so upset. Part 5. Rika. That part was so short! The fuck? I returned to Ina's house. I found her in the bedroom, in mostly the same state as I had left her. She appeared listless, hardly responding to my presence. I ran to Rika just a moment ago. I think she knows that we have the appendix document. No reaction. But she seems too upset about it. Oh, she doesn't seem too upset about it. I figured the church is aware it's a load of occult nonsense. I let out a repressed chuckle. She even wants to talk to me this evening. Ina sat still for a while, staring at me. She says she'll explain everything about the mysterious occurrences in town. And she stirred. I'm inclined to go. I mean, it's probably a good thing, right? To just talk to her instead of all this convert spy business we've been doing lately. She got out of bed. Sure, go. Let me know what she says. Ina appeared deathly pale, as though she was coming down with a fever. Say, can I maybe make you some dinner? Heat up some noodles or something? No, it's okay, I'm not hungry. Just go. You need to prepare for your date tonight. Realizing she'd rather be left alone, I gave her a quick nod before making my way to the door. I was about to exit, she uttered one last sentence in a clear voice. Please be careful tonight. That Cooper girl can't be trusted. I can tell by the creepy music. But I'm doing it anyway because I am the stupid. Oh my! Hi, Abe. Let me restate how glad I am you chose to speak with me tonight. I always believed that interpersonal differences stem from the inability to communicate. Don't you agree? I'm sure once we've open-heartedly talked things through, it will not only take away any misgivings you may have about our church, but it will also straighten our relationship lastingly. She smiled. Concern. But please, disregard my platitudes. Welcome to Sandford House, the most illustrious property on the island. This place isn't open to everybody, you know. The church only rents it out to for high-profile occasions, such as weddings and conferences. Let me show you around the manor. The property has 16 guest bedrooms. Do you know about the history of Sandford House dates back to the 17th century? It once belonged to the Lords of the Isle. I believe someone may have mentioned that to me. Anyways, as it's fundamentally wooden structure, the property has underwent countless renovations over the ages. However, the spirits on the island's past haven't departed yet. She took me by the hand, leading me through the main hallway. It's the master bedroom. After the evacuation of Abbot, the church acquired Sandford House. This was of immense symbolic importance to the islanders, as it solidified our restored sovereignty. Like conquering a tyrannical ruler's palace, we were finally autonomous over our homestead. To this day, Sandford House remains property of the church. No matter how much that old lech Leopold offers us, we'll never relinquish it to him. She led me through the ballroom and the library till we had finished our tour. It's a great place, isn't it? We have it all to ourselves tonight. Let's hang out and talk in one of the bedrooms. That way, I'll just have one room to tidy afterward. Do they compensate you for your work at the house? Aha! Bet you're looking for something that pays better than a paper round. They don't give me a formal paycheck. It's just one of those duties that comes with being a pastor's daughter. That sucks. I've never really lacked anything material, though. You probably realize by now my family is rather wealthy. The church makes tons in rent, and the members of our congregation tithe generously. What's a tithe? I don't know what that is. So many words. Oh yeah, how did your service go? She let out a contained laugh. Just the same old. I listened to my father's preaching for so long now. You learn to zone out after a while. I know it's embarrassing for me to say, but my dad's sermons have a tendency to go on and on. I usually go into my own private bubble. I pretend that I'm swimming underwater in an endless sea of blue. During those episodes, nothing gets through to me. Not even May's excited whispers. Her face grew dark. It isn't always easy, you know. As a pastor's daughter, the entire congregation looks up to you. Like living in a glass house, all your actions are magnified and judged. She winked, but to make sure no one sees us together tonight. Anyway, I wish my misery ended there. But while I am placed upon a pedestal inside the church, outsiders regard me as a freak. They view my father as an eccentric witch doctor, a relic from long-forgotten times. I've always been given trouble at school, by farm girls mainly. They try to ridicule me, drag me down, but I never let them. You hear that? She was shaking with anger. As soon as you let them humiliate you, you become lower than them, an outcast in your own town. They'll always try to debase you. Those kind of people. Do you understand? Her voice became quiet. It's just... this is exactly what they're trying to do to the council right now. I apologize. I became emotional. I don't want you to see me this way. Just wait here a minute. I'll get us some drinks from the bar. And away she was. I remained in the opulent room, which was adorned lavishly with statues and bas-reliefs, featuring figures that I've never read about in the Bible. A few minutes later, Rika returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. You should try this. It's a Chateau La Mission Haut-Brion? She poured a glass and handed it to me. A great vintage. There's nothing sour about these grapes. But anyway, I've promised answers. The largest farm in the region is owned by a man named George Van Linden. He has about 400 acres, which he tends to with a small group of farmhands, and I immediately drew my attention. When harvest comes, however, he employs a large team of seasonal workers to help him bring in the crops. These workers are paid a slave's wage. He provides accommodation for them on the farm, in a large barn that has been converted into makeshift sleeping quarters. His practices are undoubtedly a violation of the labor code. George, however, does not care. All that matters to him is his bottom line. And the workers don't complain, out of fear of their jobs. As you probably figured out, George's brother is the mayor of the town. He makes sure George stays out of trouble with the abysmal treatment of his employees. I took a sip of my wine, and met with an intense, overpowering aroma of smoke and berries that lingered in my mouth for a great while. Rika looked at me expectantly. Do you like it? Sure, this isn't some ordinary wine. She smiled. I just grabbed what we had back there. Anyway, you should know George is an impulsive man. I remember once when I was a kid, we'd pass by his orchards on our way to school. Even though we'd been taught to be wary of George, we sometimes picked up apples that had fallen by the wayside, fearing he wouldn't be able to sell them anyway. But one day, George was there. My friend Naomi picked up an apple. George saw her and immediately flew into a fit of unrestrained maniacal rage. He dropped what he was doing and came bounding at us, all the while snarling like an almost bestial display of fury. As soon as we noticed him coming in our direction, we fled toward the school, making it to the building just before he could catch us. Remembering the look of pure animalistic rage that I saw in his eyes that day, I realized right then that there was something fundamentally broken within that man. I was sure he would have inflicted seriously harm if he had been able to catch us that day. And this wasn't an isolated incident. George was the tyrant. He was known for acting out his anger on his employees. Whenever someone made a mistake or went against his will, he'd make them feel it. And of course the seasonal workers, desperate to keep their jobs, were an easy target. More and more stories of worker abuse came out. So much that even the mayor had a hard time keeping the whole issue under wraps. So, are you saying? She lowered her voice, even though there was no one there to overhear us. You must understand. What happened the night was an accumulation of coinciding factors. George's firm had been struck disproportionately hard by a series of tariffs on ammonium nitrate. Also, it was a bad year weather-wise, with extreme droughts plaguing the land. And on top of that came the allegations of worker abuse, which were likely sparked by an anonymous source from among his own employees. It all ignited on that fateful night. There had been a small confrontation earlier that day between George and one of his laborers. When George became angry, the group of workers had formed a front, preventing George from lashing out against the insubordinate employee, Michael. George wasn't about to go up against them all, yet he also couldn't retaliate by firing them, as there was no time to hire replacements. Humiliated by his own subordinates, an intense rage ate at him from the inside. Later that night, when Michael came home, George wasn't lying in waiting. While speaking, Rika had wrapped her hair tightly around the palm of her hand, as though it were bandaged. She appeared reluctant to describe what happened next. George must have dropped down from the granary, 200 pounds of concentrated fury, wielding a 10-inch pruning knife. All was right before his eyes, and all he could do was raise the blade and plunge it downward, again and again. She let out a loud, grief-stricken sob. It's just, I could still see it perfectly in my eye. The anger of his eyes. From that day, as children, when we stole those apples. Something so irrational, so hell-bent on revenge. I could easily imagine him brutally taking away another person's life. With 87 stab wounds. I apologize, the whole tale brings tears to my eyes. Come on, let's go outside. Poured a new glass and followed her through the Arch Nuevo? Conservatory. Couldn't even read. Sandford House lies on an elevation. It's higher than even the surrounding island. Quite suitable, isn't it? Like a palace. As we stood in the mild evening breeze, looking out over the distant lights of the town, a feeling of majesty gradually took possession of me. Out here, in the sticks, simply spending time with Rika and this magnificent mansion instilled in me with an air of importance. Just walking through its halls, drinking wine in the courtyard. Isn't it delightful how warm it is? I just adore coming out here for walks in the dark. I love how no one can see me. It's so exhilarating. She spun around, giggling, sending wine spilling from her glass. Sometimes I just want to dance. To go out and dance without anyone knowing. She took my hand in an attempt to instill a waltz of sorts. I was caught off guard by her sudden spontaneity and remained rigid as she pulled me. Clumsily, I followed her around the nocturnal yard. I'm sorry, I'm making you feel uncomfortable. Come on, I'll get us some more wine. Just let me back inside. The evening air has done me well. Are there any more questions you'd like answered? I thought for a second. Well, I spoke to Karen Voorhees before she was attacked. She mentioned something about a group named Flock 05. Karen, that's so typical of her. You should know, after the attack on his farm, it didn't take long for George to fall under suspicion. On behest of the mayor, the police wasn't allocating many resources to the case. Still, rumors started to spread like wildfire. In an attempt to keep the accusations at bay, the mayor tried to shift the blame onto Flock 05. The party harbors a long-running grudge against all migrant workers. It sounded plausible at the time to assume they had orchestrated the gruesome murder. This, however, is where my father stepped in. There's a limit to the amount of evil that can fester within a community like ours. Our church may be regarded as closed-minded by some, but we are still Christians, and we still always stand up to the rights of the innocent and downtrodden. Blessed is the man that endures temptation, for when he is tired, he shall receive the crown of life. Though my father understood he wouldn't be able to help George Van Linden, brought to justice, knowing the corruption that creeps within the police force, he didn't put his foot down when it came to framing an unrelated party for a crime they didn't commit. It has caused something of a rift within air. Would you say that the party split into two separate factions? She glanced at me playfully. We returned to the bedroom. We sat upon the bed. The lingering aroma of wine seems to encompass everything, as though it had drifted from my taste buds and sailed into the room. Karen had likely led you to believe that the church is against all forms of migrant labor. That's a very one-sided representation of our point of view. No farmer ever hires workers from afar without self-serving reasons. Migrants are often cheap and willing to work under appalling circumstances. The agrarians like to paint themselves as regular philanthropists, but if you knew what went down on their farms, you'd realize it's all a ruse. The sweet fragrance enveloped everything. My eyelids were gradually growing heavier, as though they were being borne down a very sticky, sugary wine. I could barely make out Rika's delicate features. I began to curse myself for drinking so much. It's a disgusting transvaluation of values. The slaveholder pharaohs have deemed themselves as righteous god kings beyond all reproach. Watch out, Abe, don't drop your glass. Deep burgundy lines transversed my vision, slowly growing darker and fading into a thick, luscious black. Her black hair coiling into infinity. Her parents always read to each other from the Bible before going to bed. Would not be fun to do. God is jealous, and the Lord avenges. As my mind drifts off to distant shores. The Lord avenges and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries. Down into sunlit seas. And he reserves wrath for his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. About to be some bullshit. Abe. Oh. Good morning, Abe. Hello? Why does she have no face? Such a sleepyhead. Time to wake up. Ah! Huh? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? That was not the thing! I did not appreciate that very much. I didn't even read what that said. Wow! And suddenly I was wide awake! Rika said, crouching beside me, attempting to comfort me in my acute terror, her face completely normal in the pale morning light. Abe, are you okay? You must have had a nightmare. A nightmare, yeah. She smiled at me. I apologized for yesterday evening, for how I behaved. It's not in character for me to let myself get like that, especially not with a man present. It's okay, I had a great time. Sorry for falling asleep on you. I don't want to be a burden. I'll help you clean and leave as soon as possible. Oh no, it's okay. Please take your time. We can leave in the afternoon. We had our breakfast and coffee and smoked salmon in the morning sun, after which Rika paced around the courtyard, brushing her hair slowly, counting every stroke. Rika. 22, 23, 24. Yeah. I was thinking about what you were telling me last night. 26, 27. I think everything makes a lot more sense now. I was just wondering. 29. What? That whole affair about the marquee, the secret document that got lost. Who was behind that? Oh. She put down a brush. I mean the document that was stolen from my father's office on Saturday night. I feel blood rushing to my head. Yeah. She said to me with piercing eyes. That was not the first time it's been stolen, right? I'm very sure you familiarized yourself with its contents. So what do you make of it? She looked eager to hear my response, as though a lot depended on it. They seemed very implausible fabrications. Perhaps. She giggled. I guess you can imagine why Leopold wanted to get his hands on him. He's such a disgrace. The one thing that these sadistic remnants of outsider persecution persisted into the 19th century. But to think that people are still trying to reinvigorate them to this day and age, only to demonize our church. That bears witness to an immense bias, a disruptive bigotry that has been held against the inhabitants of these lands throughout history. What kind of nonsense do those papers contain? That we obey a demonic sea god, that we sacrifice newborn infants to the roaring waves. Did Leopold really think he'd be taken serious with those kinds of allegations. Nonchalantly, she resumed brushing her hair. I admit, we did take the appendix off him, but not through any scheme or trickery. It was late. Leopold was being entertained by a troop of harlots that he himself had invited over, disgracing the halls of our illustrious house. My father just happened to stumble upon the papers, crumpled, sticking out of his briefcase. They're very rare manuscripts. Only one other copy exists. And John's something of a conservator, you know? Anyway, he took them, right there and then, to save the Marquis the embarrassment of trying to use them for fruitless blackmail. Then word got out of Leopold's behavior. We still have no idea who took those photographs. They were damaging to my father too, you see, considering how the whole affair took place on his property. There wasn't any malice involved. My father's a man of love. He loves his enemies. Sometimes a little too much, I'd say. I think, with a town like this, the murder, deceit, and corruption that goes on, forgiveness and love can only bring you so far. A place like this, it needs cleansing. She smiled a telling smile. When the earth was corrupt and full of violence, God looked upon earth and saw how degenerate the earth had become, for all flesh on earth had corrupted their ways. And God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Go make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Sometimes you can't get by on forgiveness alone. When evil is ubiquitous, when mankind is immutable in its ways. The farmers, the surrounding lands, they are new lands recently reclaimed from the sea. Just like when the earth was new in Noah's days. Sometimes you need to push the reset button. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. On the 17th day of the 2nd month, the fountains of great deep broke apart and the windows of heaven opened. The rain was upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. A flood. Wouldn't that be beautiful? A nourishing, all-consuming flood that sweeps away the fields and farms and washes the putrid excrement from our beautiful seabed. We'd be safe up here. The island still lies above the sea level. And it will shelter us against the waters like a wooden ark. She stared at me with mesmerizing eyes. I know it's a horrible thought, Abe, but it excites me to the fullest. If we are protected by a powerful God, a God that can wipe away the foolish constructions of man with only a flick of his finger. I feel so good about you, Abe. I want to tell you. I want to take you through town, up to the shore. I want to show you so many things. It may frighten you a little, but you need to trust me. You need to trust me. I can show you a true path to righteousness. Will you join me on my path, Abe? Do you trust me? Oh, concern! But yes, ma'am! I'm so happy, Abe. Oh, girl, me too. Me too. So indescribably happy that I'm gonna munch. Come on, we have no time to lose. There are many things I want to show you. Such happy music. Love it. In swift and practiced manner, Rika changed the bedding of the room that we had occupied, and while I gave my best shot at vacuuming the carpet. After that, she took me by the hand, leading me along the road that led to town. As we ran, the glowing warmth of the midday sun and Rika's sweet, invigorating fragrance made it feel like the first day of spring. Oh, once beautiful Abbot, to see what they've done to it. The quaint streets and fishermen's houses of old have been replaced with driveways and prefabricated mansions. To think that this place was once alive with the clatter of fish wives and sounded of roiling waves, the fresh sea air. All the toil and suffering, to think that it was all for naught. I truly long for the day when everything returns to how it once was. Look, this is one of the drainage canals I told you about. Though the marsh polder doesn't appear so different from the mainland on first sight, it relies on a heavily sophisticated apparatus to keep it from sinking back into the sea. Via these ditches, all the residual water and rainfall flows toward Rybury pumping stations, from where it's discharged into the lake. I felt a drop in my right hand. The skies became clouded, and an oppressive tension hung in the air, as though a great thunderstorm could erupt any second. I think it's about to start raining. It is, isn't it? Well, that's formidable. Everything's proceeding as planned. It hasn't rained for weeks, you know. The farmers were beginning to complain. Maybe if they had prayed more, it wouldn't be so prone to regular weather. She giggled. That's what they'd say in the past, among fishers, when storms had plagued the isle. If only they had prayed more. But they found out soon enough that God no longer listened to their prayers. God had become an intellectual God, sitting safely in his heaven, like a conceited watchmaker. He no longer dealt with our everyday qualms, engaging only in the abstract theorization. Good and evil, eternal salvation. The God of the new covenant was tied up with matters that stood far away from our day-to-day lives. It's very different from Noah's time, when God still interacted with his people. And also responsive to sacrifice. Noah built the altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings on it from every clean animal and every clean fowl. When the Lord smelled the sweet savor, he said in his heart, I'll never again curse the lands for man's sake, even though his inclinations remain evil from youth, nor will I smite every living thing ever again, as I've done. That is what the people of Abbot needed, a deity that stood close by us and rewarded our devotion by safeguarding us from harm and misfortune. When you're on a cutter boat, putting your life at risk in the open sea, braving the elements, you need a power close by. I was overcome by an unsettling sensation. Did the people of Abbot turn away from God? How dare you suggest such a thing? We are good Christians. You know that. We do as the Bible says. For the Lord is good and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. Even the 10 Commandments teach us, Thou shalt have no other gods before me. We remain first and foremost devoted to the Lord, consuming him for all metaphysical matters. If there is no other God as powerful as he. But there is a realm beneath the waves. I can't wait to show you. Well, first we need to collect something. Scuba gear. Oh, she led me to the Itch Thieves building, where the church warden seemed stunned to see me in good grace with Cooper's daughter. Fuck. We entered the annex and descended down the stairs, into the basement where Ina and I carried out our covert operation. Leaving me out in the hallway, Rika slipped into the room that was adjacent to John's office, the one where we heard that mysterious gurgling sound. But the noise was entirely absent now. And whatever I could see of the interior of the room appeared bare and sterile, almost like a laboratory. Rika exited the room holding 3 glass bottles that were filled with clear liquids. She put them in a bag, which she handed to me. I implore you to do a gentleman's duty. I took without complaint. Now let's head for the station. There's a train leaving in 10 minutes. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck? My girl, why? After the train ride, the rain outside swelled into a torrential downpour. Ooh. Ribery Beach. Did you expect to be back so soon? Gargantuan waves washed over the shore, while its lukewarm water thrashed down in buckets from the colliginous sky. I could feel the sand and surf lashing against my exposed flesh. Rika, however, appeared unnaturally calm under the extreme weather conditions. The windows of heaven have opened. Everything is coming together right now. A large high-pressure area has been building up over the last few months, causing unnatural temperatures and weather patterns to sustain into late autumn. Not many people seem to have noticed, though. Not even after Ina wrote an article on it. This is the dream! Oh my god, no! Fortunately, it wasn't cold, but the damp had was rapidly penetrating my clothes. Although I admired Rika's sturdy constitution, I privately longed for the consoling comfort of Stanford House. Since today, that high-pressure area has slowly begun shifting. It will soon give way to a stationary front that will form directly over Abbot. Isn't it mysterious how these meteorological phenomena occur? A stationary front this can persist for months, hanging in perfect stasis and causing all kinds of extreme weather effects. For 40 days and 40 nights it will rain. A perpetual deluge will cover the land. The windows of heaven have opened. The highest sheds into countless tears for the fate of our beloved isle. A large wave swept over the beach, drenching my already wet shoes. Come on, there'll be plenty of chances to soak up the rain. Let's go inside. What the fuck? A soft rumble emanated from the machine room below. Break it! Break it! Break it! Listen, the pumps are running at full capacity. With so much rainfall, it's almost like carrying water to the sea. I wonder how much longer they'll hold. Mankind had always worked so hard. Look at all this it has built, creating land out of sea. You wouldn't imagine such a thing to survive, but humanity builds its clever contraptions, a pumping station to keep the waters out. Creating land out of sea. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. But isn't it inconvenient to have seas when humanity needs fertile farmland to devour? Let's take that useless, unpredictable water and is subjected to the arrogant, profane ways of man. I wonder how clever these contraptions really are. She shifted into a more casual tone of voice. A superintendent comes by to inspect the pumps several times a week. If we were to outright sabotage the machinery, he'd notice immediately. Even a slight fall in the RPM would be a cause for the summon of a repair crew. Therefore, we must leave the machines themselves untouched. Nevertheless, the efficiency of... To effectively slow down the pumping capacity, we need to limit the throughput of water. Some day-to-day blocking of the pump is natural to occur. Due to the frequency of blocking and unblocking of the pipes, the throughput of the water isn't monitored as strictly as RPM. If the superintendent notices throughput is down, he will likely attempt to remove any mud and branches blocking the pipes, thus causing the flow to rise again. However, if we systematically limit the flow by about 20%, it will take him weeks to notice the root cause. With the amount of rainfall that is predicted, that's more than enough time. Once the soil is saturated with water, there will be no stopping the flood. Embankments that had already been cracking under the extended period of drought will engorge themselves, with the overabundance of water eroding under the slightest pressure. I was so unprepared for this unexpected outpour of technical detail that I remained unaware of the ominous implications it spelled. She opened my bag and produced the 3 glass bottles, each containing a colorless liquid. I have to be careful now. The perchloic acid inside these bottles is known to be heavily volatile when disturbed. Hey, I've been carrying these things for the past hour. It looks kind of like a nautilus shell. That's cool. This building has 3 large centrifugal pumps. I will install these bottles to slowly release their contents into the suction side of the installment, giving the water that leads through the pumps a highly corrosive property. At the pressure in which the water is pumped through the machines, the acid will gradually eat away at the metal wear rings that prevent backflow of water, thus creating a tiny clearance. And in an installment like this, the clearance is of even a fraction of a millimeter will significantly decrease pump efficiency. It will be like years of wear will happen within the span of one night. No one will suspect the rings until it's too late. And replacing the rings is a complicated process that will cause further days of downtime. Please hold guard here while I head down to the basement to instill the bottles. If anyone shows up, you have to tell them that you're using this place for a romantic encounter. Oh my god, what the why am I being illegal? Ugh. As the rains continued, we sheltered at the pumping stations, letting our clothes dry on the warm exterior of the engines. Toward the late afternoon, the storm subsided a little and entered the veil of perpetual drizzle that instantly undid the drying of her clothes. We returned to the shore. Isn't the water beautiful? You should know. There's a whole world beneath the waves. A whole realm uncharted by mankind. She looked straight into my eyes. I know you like me, Abe. Hell yeah, I do. I nodded. The thing is, I want you to understand me. To really understand me. I want you to like me, even if everything you've previously known about me turned out to be untrue. She cast her attention back to the water. She stared into the sea. She seemed entirely unresponsive. After a while, I noticed a low whisper emanating from her mouth. It was a deep, throaty sound, barely discernible. And though I initially mistook it for a long, drawn-out cough, there was something deliberate in the phrasing and made it sound undeniably speech-like. Rika was casting a spell upon the former sea. She stood there for what felt like an eternity before suddenly coming back to life. Rika. It's okay. A sense of relief shone through her tired whispers. Tomorrow, we'll have to head back to the pumping house to retrieve the bottles. Come on, let's go to the inn. It's growing late. I want to say something. It's okay, Abe. Our work for today is done. Reinforcements are underway. And just as I turned to follow her at the corner of my eye, it was as though I could detect a small tremor in the surface of the lake. Rika went out to buy some fish cakes from the cafeteria, and we sat together in our hotel room eating them in silence as the rain pattered reassuringly against the window panes. I was still numb, under the spell of the illicit act we had just casually committed. The events of the past days felt monumental to me, as though I was living in biblical times. Notwithstanding our humble surroundings, I truly felt that our movements and actions at the time were embodied by a new grandeur. And with that, I'm going to end this episode here. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you later.